series organized by, oh, by the way, we are recording this session too. So you've joined the Tech Voices series organized by Diversity Collective Lanka. And I'll be your host. I'm Ruani Kumara Singha. I'm the head of operations and delivery at InsideChat, and I'm also part of DCLK, that's Diversity Collective Lanka. So the aim of DCLK is to promote more diversity within the tech and the BPM sectors in Sri Lanka. And we do this across four main pillars: the school pillar, higher education, corporate pillar, and entrepreneurship. So this Tech Voices Woman of the Month series is one of those initiatives. And this initiative in particular showcases amazing women in technology, right? And today we've got Kushlani De Silva, who's one of those amazing women. So she is a technology marketing specialist. She used to be at WSO2 for 11 years, and when she left, she was a director of marketing. Her experience includes product marketing, content strategy, social media and branding, and she currently consults with technology companies that are looking to amplify their marketing efforts. So pretty great profile, and we're really lucky to have her on board. So Kush, to start us off, tell us
Yes.
what got you into tech?
Sure. First of all, thanks, Rooney. Thanks, DCLK, for having me on today's session. Very excited to be here and excited to be a part of the cause that is behind DCLK. So, how I got into tech marketing is an interesting story because tech was something I did not want to get into. I had sort of made up my mind about that. So my career, I'll take a couple of steps back and talk a little bit about how I started working. So my career started with a lot of customer facing roles. So I was in customer service and customer relations for telcos, for two of the largest telcos back then, Suntel and Lankabel. And I got into it soon after my A levels. The day after my A levels, actually, I was impatient. I wanted to, get into the working world as soon as I could. And it was very interesting being a part of customer service and customer relations because you got to interact with customers, help them solve their problems, help them navigate their frustrations, which isn't always easy, but it was a good experience. And for someone who's straight out of school, that's almost like being thrown in the deep end. So that was interesting. And but my passion was always marketing, and I had started studying CIM by the time I started working. So I wanted to get into a marketing role. But the marketing roles I wanted to get into were either in FMCG or services or hospitality, something like that. And the reason I didn't want to get into tech marketing is because I felt that I would have to learn a lot about the technology. It might be too complicated. It would go over my head. I wouldn't be able to relate to the target audience, which I could do if I was in services or FMCG or any other industry. So I thought, okay, tech is good, interesting, good place to grow, but probably not for me because I felt like it would be too much effort. And the learning curve would be a little too difficult for me to manage. So I had, kind of left tech marketing off the table. And then when I was looking out after, my roles in customer service and telco, I also had a short stint in education, working sort of, again, a slightly marketing focused role, but, more along the lines of helping students figure out their higher education paths. And when I was doing that, I came across this vacancy at WSO2 that was all the way back in 2009. And the vacancy wasn't really for marketing. It was more for a market research analyst. And research is something I liked because obviously you get exposed to research when you're studying for a degree or a qualification, which I was doing. And research always meant that you had to keep your eyes and ears open all the time, do a lot of reading, talk to different people. So the idea of research was quite interesting. So I thought, okay, why not, let me give it a shot. And I had no idea about who W2 was, what they did, but the role was appealing. So I thought, let me try. And then when I went in, we discussed a little bit about the role, but they also mentioned that there was a role that was more aligned towards marketing. So, helping with content, helping with various aspects of the website, and a couple of roles and tasks more aligned with marketing. So I thought, okay, sounds interesting. And when you're young, I think you're also very open to trying out new things. So you might have had your reservations earlier, but when an opportunity presents itself and it seems good, you think, let me try it. So that's what I did. And yeah, I stayed on for 11 years. So I think it's safe to say that my preconceived notions of tech marketing kind of completely changed over, which was interesting because I got to see how the company and how the team and the products evolved, and I was fortunate enough to be a part of that evolution and see the growth, everything it takes to facilitate that growth, the level of how important it is to have the right kind of people, how important it is for a team to have the right set of tools, how you need to learn from your mistakes, how you need to course correct. So I was very fortunate to see that evolution and be a part of it, work with other teams, work with engineering, work with sales. And that's how I got into tech marketing. And I think that's how I evolved. Just like the company and just like the marketing function evolved, I think I evolved as well. And that's why I'm here today working as a consultant, taking all of those experiences, because I know there are several challenges that people come across in tech marketing, both from the perspective of those who want to do more on the marketing front for their businesses, startups and scale ups included, as well as people who want to get into tech marketing who might have apprehensions similar to what I did. So yeah, that's my journey, my 11-year journey in a nutshell. But I'm so glad that I made the chance. I have no idea what I'd be doing now if I hadn't. I probably would have got into tech at some point. But yeah, I'm very thankful that I made the choice, and the fact that the environment was so great that I'm able to be a consultant today.
Thanks for sharing that journey with us, Kushlani. It's interesting how sometimes, some people don't necessarily plan it out, but things just happen and they know how to grab those opportunities and sort of see it through. And it sounds like that's a bit of what happened to you. Really, really interesting. Now, you touched on, those misconceptions about technology. It might be too challenging, it might be too technical. Did you find that those were actually true? And if yes, how did you overcome them?
So I think there's a definite learning curve involved, which I think is the case for any sort of marketing or any sort of marketing role. I mean, I might sit here today and think, oh, if I get into marketing for hospitality or marketing for FMCG, it's probably going to be a lot easier. Just like I thought, it's going to be easier because I can put myself in the shoes of the target audience, so I can relate better. But it's not that simple. There's still a whole thought process. There are different types of customers you're trying to attract, different types of problems that you're trying to solve. So there's and just like that, there is a learning curve with technology marketing as well. It might be a little steeper, and there might be stages where you have to do probably a little more research, or you have to work a little more closely with teams. So while I think the challenge is present, I think there's definitely ways to overcome it. And it also boils down a lot to how you want to overcome that challenge. Because if you're always thinking, no, this is too hard, I don't understand this, I've been reading this for the past 3 hours and it still makes no sense to me, then you're always going to be kind of stuck, right? But if you speak to someone from the product team, or if you speak to a BA who might be able to speak your language a little better, or to a sales engineer and say, hey, I'm really trying to understand it, but it's a little tough, can you help me out? And then you build those relationships within the company, and if you're lucky and if you have a network outside of your company, also people who are in tech, you can always talk to them also. And that's why I think the whole that's the whole point of building communities, especially as marketers, right? And even sessions like this and all of these other communities that are formed around marketing are very helpful, because you can sometimes you think that you're the only person having a problem. And it's not just in tech marketing also. I'm part of some groups on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, and people come across challenges on marketing channels all the time. Like they'll say, I'm trying to do something on Instagram and it's not working, I'm trying to do this on Twitter, it's not working. And then your community kind of helps you out and helps you navigate it. So coming back to the point of challenges, yes, it's definitely there. But I think if you take the time to understand, and even with understanding the product or the technology, you might not have to go as deep into it as you think you should. You just should be able to understand it in a way that makes sense to you. So when you speak to product teams or engineers, you can tell them, look, explain it to me like how you might explain it to your 5-year-old kid. And just tell me the gist of what this does, so then I can take that and translate it. Because anyway, with marketing collateral or marketing material or any of those assets, yes, there are certain documents and content that will be very technical, but there's also customer facing assets like your website, like your social media, where you're going to focus more on value and customer benefits and how you're helping solve problems. So if you understand that part, then I think your role as a marketer, you can streamline it more, you can contribute more to discussions, and you can really kind of get into that marketing role without just being a coordinator where somebody tells you, okay, write this, post this, do this, this is how it has to go. You can play a more active role in that whole kind of life cycle, because there is a tendency for you to fall into a coordinator role if you don't really understand what you're trying to market. And that's a little dangerous, because you might get comfortable with that. So you're still in tech marketing, but you're not really getting into it, if that makes sense. So it's important to take that initiative and just understand what you're trying to do and understand who you're trying to do it for. So build networks within your place of work, but also look at how you can talk to people outside, other tech marketers, other marketers even, who you might be able to find help and inspiration from.
I think that's really good tips, that you don't necessarily need to go to the depth of the technology. It's just understanding it so that you can market it to your end users.
Yes.
And that sometimes, from technical standpoints, we forget that actually the user at the end doesn't need to know all this technical
Mm,
jargon. They just need to understand how they can get value from it, how they can
correct.
do whatever they're trying to do faster or quicker, more efficiently. And
Exactly.
it's so key nowadays to have marketing as part of technology. And I think some technologists are only beginning to realize this. So really good points there. So that leads us into our next question. So what is technology marketing for those of us who might not really know?
Sure. So I think the reason we invest in technology, and the reason we build products, we build solutions, is because we are solving customer problems, and we are probably solving it either, with the advantage of being a first mover into that market, or maybe there are other players, but we are able to do it better because of the skill sets that reside within the company, or because of the technologies that you use, or simply because you have exposure and experience in the industry and you can just do it better than the competitors. So the reason behind building a business, building a product, putting together a solution, is because you have something of value that you can provide. So marketing is making sure that you tell the people who should know about that value, making sure that you do whatever it takes to get that message across. Because you can have the best product built on the best technologies, facilitated by the best engineers, but if it's sitting somewhere where all of your value propositions are sitting somewhere in a Google Drive or in somebody's laptop, all of your really great presentations are just idling somewhere, then how are your customers or your potential customers, how is your community supposed to know about it? So Very simply put, I think marketing is making sure that the people that you build the product for in the first place know that it's there, and they know that the value that you can bring them. And with tech marketing, it's just the same thing. It's just making sure that your audience knows that something like this exists, and whatever ways that they're solving those problems now, they can solve it faster, better, at less cost, with less of an investment, with better people. Yeah, so I think in simply put, that's what marketing is, making sure that the value you set out to build is communicated to your potential customers and users.
Right. And in today's world, there's so many different streams to do that in as well. So you definitely need, a team doing that for you. And it's hard to really envision, mid-sized companies not having that sort of function nowadays, isn't it? And so
Absolutely.
that leads us into marketing strategies. Can you tell us a little bit about marketing strategies?
Yeah, sure. So I think, again, another problem that happens is you know the importance, or at some point you understand, you realize the importance of marketing. You know it has to be done, but you're not sure how to do it. You're not sure when to do it. You're not sure the channels that you need to use, and you might not even be sure exactly how to position yourself for different groups, different user groups, if you have more than one. And you would most probably have more than one, especially if you're in tech, because you would have the user who might be a developer, and then you would have probably people like the project managers, and then further up, like CIOs and CTOs who make the decisions. So there are different customer personas that you talk to. So a marketing strategy sort of puts all of that kind of into a nice perspective, into a nice format, where you can really help your marketing efforts align to your overall corporate goals and your corporate vision. And then you can also see where, you can get an idea of, okay, who is your priority out of all of those target markets. Who is your priority. If you pick your developers as your priority, then your marketing strategy will be targeted towards your developers. So then your marketing strategy will detail out how you want to get in touch with them, what assets are you going to use to get in touch with them. And by assets, it can be anything. So developers, they like to consume a lot of content. So is content going to be a large part of your marketing strategy? If it's your content, how often are you going to produce content? In what formats are you going to produce them? If it's more the CIOs and the CTOs, how are you going to entice them? Are you going to try some form of remarketing? Are you going to target social media? Are you going to try and do more intimate sort of events that are targeted to the C-suite? So a marketing strategy brings a lot of process and a lot of direction into how you want to that you have a marketing message, and that you have value that needs to be communicated to the end users. And a marketing strategy just puts a nice process into all of those things. So when you put together a marketing strategy, you always have to think about the overall purpose and how it is lining up with your corporate objectives. For example, if you have a certain corporate objective for that year, then your marketing strategy must definitely align with it. It will also help you kind of understand how often you're going to use, first of all, what channels you're going to use. Are you going to use social? Are you going to use content? Are you going to use events? And what sort of frequency you're going to invest into each of the channels. Is the entire effort going to be organic, which means you don't spend any money, or are you going to spend some money? If you're going to spend money, how much are you going to spend? Where are you going to spend? And most importantly, your KPIs and your milestones. Because another problem with marketing strategies is you get the strategy part done perfectly, right? Everything's nice. It's in a nice Gantt chart, or on a Miro board. You've assigned owners. That's another important thing. You have to have an owner for any form of marketing initiative, because otherwise what happens again is that it becomes nobody's priority. So it's forgotten, beginning of the year, you might say, okay, this is the year that we're going to completely redefine how we do marketing. And then by February, everybody's forgotten about it. So that's why it's really important. And I've seen this happening, even with some clients. So they know the importance, they have sort of a plan and everything laid out, but no owner. So then who's going to follow up? And I mean, Rooney, you know how this works, right? Try going to engineers and getting them to write, try going to them and getting them to commit to webinars. It's tough, right? So if nobody's kind of, following up and making sure that there's a nice timetable for events or a calendar, it's not going to happen. So marketing strategy means that you have to have an owner, someone who's going to make it their priority to make sure that the work gets done. So yeah, so owners are important. Marketing strategy helps put everything into perspective and into a nice process. And it's also important to have KPIs and milestones, because if you're a startup and you have a marketing strategy for the first 6 months, you need to break it down into smaller milestones. Like, what are you going to achieve in month 1? What are you going to achieve in month 2? What are your KPIs for, the first 2 months? What are your KPIs for the next 2 months? And remember, those KPIs don't always have to be, okay, I need to have X number of leads or X number of website hits. It can be something as simple as committing to a proper social media calendar, committing to, posting 2 really high quality posts every week. So it can be simple as that. So the KPIs can be channel oriented at the beginning, because another problem that happens is you have a marketing strategy and within 2 months you expect results. And if you don't get those results, you kill the whole thing. So that's another thing that can happen quite often. So it's important to set expectations and milestones and KPIs in the correct way, so that A, you're not setting yourself up for failure, and B, you really know, when it's time to have a look, really critically evaluate and see, is this campaign working out or not?
Yeah. You brought up some really key points there, I think, about understanding why you're doing it, who you're doing it, and then figuring out how you break it down and then track it. And I find these, marketing initiatives fall by the wayside when people don't really understand how it's, why we're doing it, how it's aligning to the greater business goals
Exactly.
and where the company wants to go. So that's a really important thing. You highlighted it really well. And then, so we've got, broadly marketing. And so now there's product marketing as well. I mean, you can do marketing for any kind of business, but what in your words is product marketing in particular?
So product marketing is, again, just making sure that the value that your products offer to your customers, making sure that that value is communicated to your target audiences and to your community as well. Because again, in tech, particularly if you're a product company, you are also trying to build a community, right? Because it might start with, users of your product. It's a little different if you're a services company, but it can still apply. So it's about making sure that your product values, your product brand, your product, how your product is really helping solve customer problems, making sure that that gets communicated to them. And with product marketing, it's again a bit of a multifaceted role, because you have to also think about it a little bit like the customer as well. It's the same case for all of marketing, but with products, because it's within that kind of frame of a product. So you have to be able to get your messaging down very down to the dot, make sure that you've identified your correct customer segments, and you have to be able to do it consistently over a period of time. Again, something that unfortunately happens quite often is, let's take the example of a new product launch, right? You have a bunch of activities during the first 2 months of launch. Everybody who should know about it probably finds out about it. But you have to also remember that finding out about your product doesn't necessarily mean people are going to use it. And people have a lot on their minds, right? I might see an ad today for a product that if you just take it, if you take a B2C spin to it, I might see a product today that I've been wanting for months, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to go and buy it today or try it today. I need to be reminded consistently, or if I've shown some sort of interest, I need to be reminded consistently over a period of time. So consistency is something that's very important in product marketing, and something that falls off the wagon. So that's something that that teams involved in marketing need to think about as well. And since we're talking about product marketing, Rooney, I think broadly, if you look at marketing, particularly in tech, I think there's three different types of marketing that happens. So one is obviously the product marketing, and that's an extension of corporate marketing, really making sure that people, that your users and customers are aware of who you are and the kind of value you deliver. Then there's also the marketing that you do to attract talent. And that also, obviously when you do product marketing, it has sort of a trigger effect on marketing for recruitment as well. But it's important to have a focused effort for recruitment also. And thankfully, I see a lot of tech companies now paying attention to that, which I think is great. So they're very conscious about maintaining sort of a unified brand image. They are, they like sharing, employee success stories. They are invested in employer branding. So all of that is great. So that's the second category. And then there's a third, which is marketing to investors, which is a little more targeted and not so much mass marketing, but still, you're, again, if you're, kind of pre-seed, or, if you're, if you've gone through a couple of rounds of funding and then you're looking for more, then you have to also think that, okay, at any point, a potential investor might stumble on my website or social, or see me listed, on a portfolio somewhere, and they might be interested. So yes, after the conversations happen, there's investor pitches and things that are more direct, but during the course of your business, during the course of attracting investors, you also have to pay effort into marketing for investors. So just wanted to touch on those three, so that companies understand that the motivations for the three are different, and the assets that you require for the three are different as well.
Yeah, and so with those segments as well, when you're marketing to your end users, now you've got B2B companies or B2C, how might that also be different with your marketing strategies?
Yeah, so I think, again, one thing to remember, and I actually saw this, I think it was on Twitter today. B2B or B2C, it's always H to H, which is human to human. And one mistake that, again, I've sort of, been a part of this as well, and with tech, I think everybody expects tech content and tech marketing to be very stuffy and serious and, no nonsense, because the audience is technical and they don't like this. They just want to be told what it is. Call a spade a spade. Don't beat around the bush. Don't use all this marketing fluff, which is, a word everybody, tries to put across when you're, trying to make a campaign or something a little more serious. And that's fine. I appreciate that technical audiences are a little different, and you might have to go straight to the point with them. But you're still, at the end of the day, you're still a human being. You're still going to resonate to, to marketing that might relate to your emotions, or marketing that might relate to problems. If you're frustrated, even if you're a developer, or like a hardcore coder, you can be frustrated if there's a product that you've been trying out that is, simply not solving your problem. So having marketing messages aligned, I'm not saying exploiting that frustration or not exploiting that emotion, but marketing messages that are, that kind of say, hey, we get your frustration, we know that, you've been trying to accomplish this task for some time, and that's why we built this product. There's nothing wrong with it. That's not fluff. That's not, stating anything that's, that's not accurate or authentic. So that's something that I encourage everybody in tech marketing to believe and to advocate for, because it's a tough conversation when it comes to creating marketing campaigns, and you need to get input from, your product managers and from engineering and so on. So, that's where the tough conversation happens, where they might look at it and be like, okay, these creatives have a lot of animations, it looks a little childish, we probably should go for a more serious approach, a more toned down approach. But I think again, that's the point where tech marketers can come in and say, look, but still the person, that's the keyword, right? It is a person who's going to see the ad or the post or the site or the landing page. It's a person, it's not a bot, it's not a business. It's a person. So that's where, you have to make sure that you talk facts, you're serious, yes, but you still don't let go of the emotional and the slightly like candid moments of that entire campaign.
I like that. You're marketing to human. Yes, sometimes we do forget that, don't we?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, really interesting there. Um, and so you also said, look, sometimes you should just go and, market it with that human side to it, even though you might get guidance even from management saying, no, we should just keep it really to the point. And and isn't this also where, marketers can be creative and test things out? Because sometimes you really don't know until maybe you test it out on a small segment and see, hey, is this going to take off? And if you don't sometimes take a bold step to do that, you'll never really get to somewhere innovative. Have you had much experience with that? Sometimes just taking a leap of faith and it's worked out?
Yeah, so I'll give a really I'll give a good example from my time in product marketing at WSO2. So WSO2 is a product company, right? And then in 2017, we launched our first solution, which was built on some of WSO2's really fantastic performing products, and we had to so the product was built for regulatory compliance, and it was for banks, which meant, okay, banks, CIOs, CTOs of banks, very serious audience, no kind of funky marketing
No
campaigns,
nonsense.
nothing. Yes, exactly. And we had the product launch was initially for Europe and UK, and then Australia had a similar regulation called the consumer data rights. So then we had to think of marketing for Australia as well. And now this is 2018. Yeah, 2017 was the initial launch. It was 2018, 2019, when postal campaign. So this is a good example, because this is an example of going non-digital that actually worked out. So imagine a tech company in 2018, 2019 wanting to do a postal campaign. I don't even know if that's the correct word, because I haven't done it before, but basically it meant that we were gonna kind of send brochures, a white paper out to people, and get them to read it. And at the time, it was just a matter of nobody reads things on paper anymore. If you want to do a white paper, just have it online and send them an email with it. So we thought, okay, we still want to do the postal campaign, but let's sort of go and see, let's do sort of like a small test run, and let's take it. We were sponsoring an event. Let's take it to this event and see how this white paper does. And this white paper was not a small one. It was about maybe 7-8 pages. And the premise of the white paper was it answers some of the key questions that CIOs and CTOs of banks would have about the consumer data right at the time. And the regulation was very new. People were naturally a little curious and unsure about what it entailed, what sort of technology they'd had to put in place to make sure that they were complying, and so on. So we took it to this event, and you know how brochures do at events, right? People pick it up and then you kind of toss it away. But we saw, what we observed, it was a small crowd, because it was more of like a smaller event, but we saw that a lot of people were actually there in corners reading the collateral. People were taking it back with them. We actually saw people kind of stuffing it in their backpacks and taking it back. I'm hoping they read it, but I think they did, because we actually did get a few inquiries after they had gone and read the white paper, because we had our contact information and so on. And I thought that was very interesting, and a really good learning experience, because right now all we focus on is digital, right? Go digital, do everything digitally. People are spending time on their phones, on their laptops. Nobody's going to read anything. And I thought this was a good experience, and this is actually inspiration to go ahead with the postal campaign, but I kind of changed roles after that, so I couldn't really see that through. But it was a really good exercise just to see, because we've been at events in the past, and people don't really sit around and read brochures. But I think what was important is that we understood that this is the kind of audience, and a lot of when we were doing our research, people said, look, in Australia, people actually do read a lot, because they commute to work by train. So, when they're on the train, they're probably reading, might be on their device, might not be on their device. So, make use of that, give them something good to read. The content was timely, it was presented in a nice white paper. And we took it to an event where we knew the right kind of people would be there. So it wasn't even a strategy; it was a small subset of a bigger strategy trying to attract the CIOs and CTOs of banks. But it really worked, I think.
That's really interesting.
Mhm.
And I'm just curious because I once had a client and they did a lot of collateral to be read, so physical collateral, because their demographic were older. Do you think there was something to do with that?
It did. So I think when we researched this, also we found, I'm not going to mention the age category and get into trouble of calling a particular age category older, but when we did our research, it did state that this target audience that we were looking at, who were the CIOs and CTOs of banks, given that demographic, they were more comfortable about reading things, on paper. And what we found was that they actually look forward to receiving mail, like, actual mail, not email. And that's why we decided, the postal campaign would be a good way to go, because people, I mean, we might receive a lot of promotional material in the mail, and you don't really read it, right? You toss it, similar to how you pick up brochures at events and you toss them. That you worry that there's a tendency of that happening, but that was not the case. Apparently they liked this paper sort of material, and we were going to do the postal campaign also with like a nice cover letter speaking about who we are and why we're doing it. So very, very traditional, right? I mean, that sort of approach is not something that you hear of in this kind of time.
Yeah.
But yeah, very
So,
interesting.
so it sounds like you did a lot of research into who you're doing it for, the end
Yeah.
users, and that's sort of key to getting your marketing campaign right,
Yes,
knowing who you're doing it for and what
exactly.
they're like. Now you touched on startups, right? Can you tell me a little bit more about, if you were a startup, you're really strapped for cash and, you don't have a lot of people on payroll, how can they go about, having that marketing capability?
Sure. One thing that I also recommend, in my last year being a consultant, one thing I recommend is try to start or try to set milestones, because marketing is a huge area, and you might see your competitors doing something, you might see companies that that are your inspiration, you might see them doing something, and it is so tempting to want to do everything at the same time, because you think that is the only way that you can be successful. But again, that is setting yourself up for failure, because if you're going to try and do 5 things, you're probably not going to do any of them right. So something that I recommend to clients is look at your most critical touch points. So if you're trying to attract customers, how are you generally trying to attract them? You're probably doing something on social, you might be doing a little bit of outbound, not structured, but you might be um, finding certain contacts and certain referrals, you might be trying to do a bit of outbound. So what do you send to them? Are you sending them some collateral? Are you pointing them to your website? Are you pointing them to any sort of videos that you've created? So if those are your touch points, so your website, your social, and your content, like your corporate presentation, for example, if those are your touch points, if those are the assets that you rely on for your customers to read and understand who you are and the kind of value that you bring, that is the place to start. Because if you do I can also tell you an example where you might be very tempted. You see a lot of paid ads and things on LinkedIn and Google, and when you search for certain things, right? So you might be very tempted to get into ads because you think ads are going to bring you leads. Ads will bring you leads, but they will only bring you leads if the call to actions that those ads are pointing to are relevant and are as good as the ads. Because if you have really good ads and if you have really bad content that those ads are pointing to, then that experience breaks, right? I mean, how often have we clicked on ads expecting it to take us to content, having a certain perception about the content and it turning out to be completely different. So that's, again, I'm bringing that up because it does happen. So look at those initial touch points that your customer, you don't have to have a set out customer journey, but look at how they kind of traverse through your universe. Might be website first, might be social media next, they might go to a webinar you had done, a recording. They might go and look even on your website. Again, this is another thing that I try to recommend as much as possible, especially if you're startup, on your about page, please have like a little bit about your story and pictures of your team and your founders. I think it's so important, and especially with in marketing for investors, right? People, again, I think this is something I saw on LinkedIn mentioned somewhere. People invest in people. Yes, you invest in technology and you invest in business, but you also invest in people. And if you can't get a sense of the people behind the business, that's a loss. I feel like that's a lost opportunity. So make sure that you talk a little bit about your team and your vision on your about us page. Try and have some pictures of your team. Even if you're a small team, I think that's okay. That's another area where people are a little apprehensive, thinking I'm very small at this point, nobody will want to do business with me. But I think you have to get past that, because if what you're offering is of value, people will still give you a chance. So I think you should just go ahead and do that. And so I think it's important to set milestones, figure out what your priorities are and how your customers align with those priorities, and focus on that, and then focus on the next thing. So if your first milestone is within the next 3 months, I'm going to build a fantastic website, great. Next 3 months or next 2 months, I'm going to focus on my social media. I'm going to commit to posting high quality content, like I was saying earlier, maybe twice a week. Then I'm going to figure out what my lead funnel is like. I'm going to figure out what my customer journey is like. And that way you set out certain milestones. Then, you're not trying to do everything at the same time. You're taking your time. And again, especially if you're a smaller company, let's say that you're trying to do all this with one marketing intern or one marketing executive, which is again probably the case with startups. Imagine the wealth of knowledge that marketing intern will gather in the 3 months of setting up that website, right? It's going to prepare the marketing intern uh, to a point where they know that, okay, in the next couple of months, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to prioritize. Whereas if you task a marketing intern with 5 different things to accomplish within 3 months, they're probably going to quit. That's just the reality of it. So think about the exposure and the learning experience that you're giving them, and the fact that you're also you're building up a really good marketing hire as you go along.
That's a nice way of thinking about it. You're actually also growing somebody, and businesses often, I think nowadays are thinking about that, right? It's not just about, using somebody's skill and then chucking them out, but it's really having people around to grow with you. That's a really good point. So some of those were, overarching best practices. And we do hear a lot of, jargon about, say, brand and, best practices. What would you say to expand on that? What are some best practices that companies should follow?
Sure. So there's a pet peeve of mine. I'll just bring that up here. And again, I think the reason it happens is because there's a bit of a lack of knowledge also. So on social media, it's very simple, right? On social media, there are different social media channels, right? There's LinkedIn, there's Instagram, there's Twitter, and there's Facebook. So what a lot of companies, and I've seen this happening, I've also tweeted about it because I feel like it's such an easy fix if you just spent a little bit of time. you design one banner and use it across all your social media channels. So when it shows up on Twitter, you can't see it. You're only seeing a strip because the size specifications for LinkedIn and the size specifications for Twitter are different. So you might think, it's not a big deal. If someone's interested and they see the text on the post, they're still going to come to my page, to my website anyway. But what does that say about your brand, right? If you are a technology company particularly, and the brand that you want to portray is that you are reliable, you're fast, you're better than the competitors, you offer a different kind of value, yet you can't spend the time to get your social media presence right, what's that going to say? Again, I know people might be listening and thinking, oh, that's a very simple thing. But again, I think that attention to detail, because we're not going to compromise on attention to detail in products, are we? If there's a bug, or if something's broken, you're going to go to the developer and be like, fix this. So apply that same level of attention to detail to your marketing as well. And what that tells me, if I see a company or a brand that hasn't taken that extra, I'm not sure how long it takes to resize, but I'm guessing not much. But if you haven't taken that extra time to fix it, that simply means that you're careless, and you're not as concerned about your corporate image. So I think brand, that's one very simple example. Another thing is, the whole point of a brand is you have certain visual elements, and then you have certain non-visual elements as well, right? So what if, so now this purple color that you have, Rooney, for DCLK, that's part of your brand, right? What if we were sitting here today and this virtual background was some other color, right? Then that kind of breaks your brand consistency, because all of your social media posts are a certain color, they're a certain font, and the whole purpose of having that consistency is when people are scrolling, especially on channels like social, you have you don't have much of their attention. So if you maintain a consistent brand image over time, and I'm someone who really likes DCLK and I try my best to watch out for their posts, and I'm scrolling and you put up a post that doesn't have that purple color and those fonts, I might miss it. Whereas the minute I see this purple, I'm going to think, oh, that's DCLK, oh, let me go check it out. So it's as simple as that. But I think it is so important, because look at some, if you take examples of other brands, let me take an example of brands that we're familiar with, right? Think of brands like Kiehl's, right? Look at the green color that they use. Sometimes it's Kiehl's even without really paying a lot of attention, right? If I talk about tech again, look at companies like, I think 99X went through a rebrand recently, and look at their colors, right? And their social media all of the time is very consistent. So you can easily even differentiate between a vacancy ad and between an ad that talks about their products. So that's why it's so important to pay attention to those things, simply because people don't have time. Your target audience does not have the time to go in and zoom and figure out, okay, this is the company, this is what they're talking about. Oh, I've heard of them, I'm actually interested in them. So you have to make it as easy as possible for people to be able to identify you in this big mass that we are competing in. So I think, simply put, that's the whole importance of brand, and always being consistent and authentic in what you speak about, and what you convey as well.
Thanks, Chris. Those were some really interesting and insightful tips. We are running out of time. It's just,
Oh.
time's gone by so quickly. It's been so interesting. But let's move to, opportunities in the market.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different marketing roles in marketing. Can you tell us about some of those?
Yeah, sure. So a role that I can definitely say is coming up is for content creation in tech. A lot of tech companies now, both startups and scale-ups, have realized the importance of having good content, and that might involve the point of a website revamp, or it might involve creating actual blogs and white papers and case studies and so on. So and it is something I recommend as well, is for a tech company to at least have a content writer, because content writers are really hard to find, and writing for tech, going back to our previous conversation, yes, you're still writing for humans, but writing for tech means, sometimes your tone and your approach, you have to take a slightly different angle. So as a result of that, I do know companies try to work with certain content writers who might not be in tech, and they might get into a bit of a challenge. But I still think that if you're good at your writing, if you have those basic skills locked down, and then if you practice that approach of having, without trying to write everything by yourself, even interviewing some of the people that in the company around the topic that you're trying to write on, that will really help. So opportunity wise, I think for writers, definite opportunity. And the other one is for someone who knows their way around social media, someone who knows their way around search, SEO, and it's almost like a Swiss Army knife sort of person who can make sure that the social media part is happening well, and that your kind of website. You've understood how people navigate your website, how they navigate your social media, someone who's good with tools like, obviously the standard social media and social listening tools, but also someone who can maybe help you out a little bit with Google Analytics and all of that. No, again, I'm saying this because, it's a startup and you might not be able to have like a 5-person marketing team. So I think these two roles are crucial. And also, when again, with limited budgets, you might try to find an amalgamation of both, which is not ideal, because writing takes a lot of time. I can say that from personal experience, it takes a lot of time. So if you distract your writer with other things and say, do the 2 posts on social for this week when they're knee deep in research, that's a bit of a problem. So I would say get a writer who can just sit, focus, write, or create content. I mean, it doesn't have to be like the written form. And also have the social media sort of digital marketing person who can navigate their way around your digital channel. So I think those 2 roles will definitely work well with each other, will work well with the other members of the team. And again, the other opportunity is opportunities for similar to what I'm doing right now. So what I do is I consult with marketing, with technology companies on different marketing efforts. And, I help them with go-to-market strategies, with content, with websites, and so on. So again, you can, and this is a niche, right? And the reason that a lot of clients also choose to work with me is because I come with a technology marketing background. But that doesn't mean that, just because you don't have a tech background, you can't get into technology marketing. Like I said, if you take the initiative, do your research, then there's, definitely options out there. So there's also options available for consulting, I think. And a lot of companies like to take that option because you might not be able to afford a full-time hire. So they'd probably like to work with you for about 2 or 3 months, or they'd probably like to work with you on a project, a designated project, depending on those milestones and priorities that we spoke about earlier, and then kind of gradually work their way towards a hire. So I've done engagements where I've done like the project for maybe 1 or 2 months, then I've helped them with hiring, and then I'm guiding that hire into executing the strategy that I created. So that's also a model that you can think of. But to summarize, in terms of opportunity, definitely opportunities for writing, which means you have to like research. Definitely opportunities for social media sort of folks, and opportunities to get into consulting like I did.
Hi, Kush. Well, we can go into questions. So we've
Sure.
got a few questions coming in. So any tips to self-learn tech marketing before embarking on a tech marketing career?
So there are lots of courses and material online. I personally really love what HubSpot has. They're not tech marketing specific. I've not come across any technology marketing specific material just yet, but some of what HubSpot and their academy has is really good for you to learn, if you want to get a sense of things before getting into tech marketing. But for me, more than any kind of course or anything, how I've learned is simply from social media, particularly Twitter and LinkedIn. And how I've done that is I've figured out the kind of people who speak about the topics that I want to learn about. And then I follow them, and then I follow certain hashtags, and I go and engage in conversations. Twitter has these really great Twitter chats where you can participate, and you can contribute to how others are looking at certain things. So that has really helped me explore and understand more about technology marketing. So simply get involved with those communities of other technology marketers. Obviously follow certain professional kind of qualifications, or courses like what I mentioned HubSpot has. But I think just being active and open on social media and doing your own research and searching for stuff. I mean, there'll be like plenty of content out there. Again, there will be tech marketing specific things, but just being a part of that community, I think is one of the best ways to learn.
And Kushlani, I think you've got some workshops coming up as well, right?
Yes,
Perhaps you
I
could tell
do.
them about that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm hoping to conduct two different types of workshops. As I mentioned a couple of times earlier, I work as a consultant, and I help technology companies with their marketing efforts. And one thing I've realized is, now that 2022 is coming up, you might want to figure out how you want to align your marketing strategy for 2022. So I'm actually conducting customized workshops per company. This is for companies that want to align their marketing efforts for 2022. So that's what you can see on chat under marketing strategy workshop. So you can register your interest via the Google form over there, and then I'll get in touch and we can discuss the specifics. The other one is a tech marketing. So the tech marketing workshop is is closely related to what we just spoke about those of you who are aspiring tech marketers. Maybe you're already tech marketers, but you want to learn a little bit more. And or for those of you who are in other forms of marketing and who want to get into tech marketing, I'm hoping to do a workshop, and share some of my experiences in tech marketing, similar to what I did today, maybe with a little bit more detail. And if you're interested in that, then you can register your interest via that link as well. And yeah, that's my LinkedIn. I'd love to hear your feedback on the session. And I also I try to speak a lot through my LinkedIn and through my other social media. I try to speak a lot about the kind of work that I do, and my experiences. So yeah, if you're interested, I'd love to connect.
Thanks for sharing all of that, Kushlani. I'm
Sure.
sure a lot of our participants will be really interested in those workshops. So we've just hit 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I really like to, again, thank you, Kushlani, for all your comments and, taking the questions today as well. And we'll send an email around after this session as well. And if you do have other questions, you can put those to Kushlani after this session as well. So thanks again. It was lovely to have you. I
No
think I
worries.
learned a lot today.
Thank you so much for having me, Rooney, and thank you to everyone at DCLK and all of the sponsors as well.
Great. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.